The baby boomer generation is completely rewriting the rules of the housing market. And instead of downsizing like past generations, they're holding onto their homes or even upgrading, building on at unprecedented rates. And the shift is having a ripple effect on the entire real estate landscape. Boomers control currently about 2/3 of America's housing wealth, and contrary to what many expected, most of them, they're just not selling. Instead, they're choosing to age in place, renovate, or even move into bigger homes. It's an unexpected trend, and it's reshaping housing supply, pricing, and home ownership opportunities for younger generations. And with millennials struggling to buy homes and housing inventory hitting historic lows, the decisions boomers are making today could determine the future of real estate for decades. So what's driving the shift, and what does it mean for the housing market? I'm going to break it down for you. Make sure you stay to the end, because I have the number one reason and what I'm planning to do because of this. So what's actually happening? I'm going to go through that right now. What's going on with the baby boomers? I'm going to show you some numbers, and you have to understand the scope of the trend, because baby boomers currently control, like I said, 2/3 of the housing wealth in America. That's a staggering amount of real estate, and contrary to what many expected, they're not rushing to sell these properties. They are getting interested. I'm getting a lot of calls from people lately. My seminar was packed last month. So I'm basing this off a survey and plus of my own knowledge from Clever Real Estate. I have over 300 and some home sellers in my pool. I know they're moving more, they're calling me more now. But what Clever Real Estate said that more than 70% of baby boomers own their homes. And the problem is that the majority of them plan to stay in those homes for as long as possible. And this concept, what we call it aging in place. And it's becoming increasingly popular. Numbers are quite striking when you look deeper. In fact, studies show that seniors over 65, they're expected to account for more than 1/3 of all US households by 2038. That's a lot. Take a look at this data from Redfin. Take a look at this. This analysis is of the median homeowner tenure by year in the United States. What this is showing us is that the average American homeowner now stays in their home for 13.4 years, up from just 8.7 years in 2010. That's a trend you want to be looking at. And it's driven by these baby boomers holding onto their properties. And what's even more remarkable is that American homeowners aged 60 to 79 are now more likely to have a mortgage than at any time since 2000. I want you to take a look at this data with me. Between 2000 and 2022, mortgage use among homeowners aged 65 and older decreased by 28.5%, while it declined for all younger age groups. So basically what that means is mortgage use fell by 9.4% for homeowners under 35, 6.9% for those aged 35 to 49, and 4% for the 50 to 64 age group. So the trend indicates a growing reliance on mortgages among older homeowners in contrast to younger generations who have seen a decline in mortgages over time. Interesting, right? So it's not just about staying put. Boomers are just choosing to upsize or make significant improvements in their homes. And instead of downsizing, some are purchasing larger, newer homes. I've seen that happen with many of my home sellers. And what they're doing is they're prioritizing this extra space for family, moving in with them, or they're visiting. People are moving because of the convenience of the modern low maintenance designs, like a smart home, things like that. My friend's right now selling her big home, and she's building a new house, and they're in their 70s. Many of my home sellers are calling to put upgrades in their home. They're putting substantial money into their renovations, and they're modifying their homes with walk-in showers, water doorways, main floor bedrooms, putting additions on, and ensure that they can comfortably age in place. And what's particularly interesting is that many boomers are making these decisions from a position of financial strength, which has never happened before. So this generation has accumulated significant wealth through decades of home ownership during periods of substantial appreciation. Think about the last 4 years. They bought their home before 2000, around 2000, a lot of them. That's like 20 some years in their home or more. I think most of my homeowners that come to me to look for sell their home or have been in their home for at least 30 years. Prices were lower relative to incomes than they are today. I believe I've read that the median home value in 1980 was about $47,200, and by 2023 it had increased to over $400,000, a growth rate that's far exceeded inflation and wage increases. And that's unlike previous generations. These boomers have the financial resources now to choose how and where they want to live in retirement. They're taking advantage of this record high equity levels, with those aged 65 and up collectively sitting on nearly $12 trillion in home equity, and that's a number back as of 2023. And I also want to note This trend isn't universal. There are certain boomers who are downsizing and moving to retirement communities, but the proportion of them doing that is much smaller than experts predicted. Some of these adult communities aren't seeing the numbers they expected because their timelines have been moved back significantly. What's the important question here to ask? Why are so many boomers choosing to stay in their home or even upgrade rather than downsize? Why is this happening? All right, let's go through that right now. Why are they staying? Well, there's some notable reasons that we've kind of talked about, but I think one thing is that boomers are generally healthier and they're more active than the previous generations. There's so many more things about staying fit and eating right. Many 70-year-olds today are still working or traveling and maintaining really active lifestyles. I want to show you this graph. Take a look at this graph. The labor force participation rate for Americans aged 65 and older has nearly doubled since the late 1980s, rising from just 11% in 1987 to around 19% in 2023. So what this increase reflects is a broader trend of older adults staying in their workforce longer, driven by financial needs or personal fulfillment. I think it's a lot more personal fulfillment and their improved health. Meanwhile, employment among younger adults, 25 to 64, peaked at 77% in 2000 and has remained relatively stable. As a result, the older Americans, they don't feel old in the way their parents might have at the same age, and they'll see the need to adjust their living situations. Like retire? What's that? I don't want to retire. Secondly, there's a strong emotional attachment to their homes. They're not just financial assets, they're places filled with decades of memories where they raised their children and built their lives, and the thought of leaving, it can be emotionally difficult, especially if they're still physically capable of maintaining the property. The number one reason why my sellers move is because of maintenance. They don't want to do the maintenance anymore. Now, the AARP put out a cool survey, and they found that more than 75% of adults over 50 want to stay in their current home as they age. And the desire for continuity and familiarity just becomes more stronger with advancing age. I saw that with my mom. She really shouldn't have left her community. We took her out because we felt like she needed to be around more people, but she likes staying in her home. Third thing I want to talk about is boomers are finding economic incentives to stay put. In many states, property tax laws favor long-term homeowners, making it financially advantageous to remain in a home you've owned for decades rather than purchasing a new one, even if it's smaller. For example, California, they have property tax laws, Proposition 13, that limit tax increases on properties as long as they've remained under the same ownership. Wow. So when a home is sold, a new assessment can result in significantly higher property taxes. Believe it or not, only in California, right? Creating a financial disincentive to move. I get that, but for the new people, not knowing what their taxes are going to be. Hey. I think a big one, though, is the issue of where to go. I think most of my clients, I'm going to move in 2 years, but I don't know where I'm going. The cost of downsizing isn't as beneficial as it was before, and smaller homes and condos in desirable areas, it could be really expensive, basically negating financial benefits of downsizes. And one of my clients, they say they don't want to move because it's too expensive to move. I call it the downsizing discount. It kind of shrunk, considerably in the last few years. The price gap between the medium 4-bedroom house and the medium 2-bedroom house areas, and especially the metropolitan areas, they've narrowed from about 35% a decade ago to just 15 to 20% today. In some particularly hot markets, there's almost no price difference at all between the larger family homes and smaller properties in the same area. And another reason, I think I've probably beat this to death on most of my videos, they have the rate lock effect. They've refinanced during periods of really low interest rates, they have that 3% rate and they don't want to double the rate. I get it. So that's a big reason why people aren't moving. And another thing that people tell me they don't want to move is because they want to maintain enough space for family gatherings. They're still into all that, and grandchildren, and stay close to their grandkids so they can stay or maybe have an extended period of time. One of my friends has no plans of moving. She said that everyone keeps telling me I should sell my 4-bedroom house now that I'm alone. But she would say, where would my grandkids stay when they visit? Where would we have our holiday gatherings? So the house isn't just a building to her, it's the center of her family life. And that's happening with a lot of people too. Because the pandemic, it definitely reshaped many boomers thinking about their housing. The isolation experienced during lockdowns highlight the really importance of having personal space and control of your environment. Because many may have gone to these retirement communities after seeing all the restrictions they put on during the height of COVID. I have friends of parents have died in a nursing home and they couldn't even go see them. It was terrible. This national survey conducted in 2022 found that 70% of older adults had reconsidered their housing plans due to the pandemic, with the majority becoming more determined in age to place. That's it, rather than move to congregate kind of settings. A lot of boomers right now putting on these additions and first floor bedrooms. I talked about walk-in showers and all those different things, making their house smart. They are really interested in that. That's why the contractors are so busy right now. Home renovation industry has responded to this trend, and there's a lot of people looking for some good contractors out there. I have read that the annual expenditure on renovations went from like $3 billion in 2010 to like $10 billion now, which is crazy. What people are doing, they're looking at the renovation costs and looking at moving. And it's typically less than moving to a new property when you factor in moving expenses and closing costs, emotional toll of relocating, because the average cost of aging in place modifications could be $10,000, $50,000, while the total cost of selling a home and buying a new one could exceed like $100,000, right? With all these expenses considered, right? Now, if you're finding this information valuable and want to stay updated on the latest housing trends, hit that like button, subscribe. It really helps and it supports my channel. Thank you so much. Let's get back to this. So let's talk about the impact. This boomer staying aging in place thing is having a severe impact on the housing market. And of course, the most immediate impact is the housing inventory. All these millions of boomers holding on to their homes longer than expected leads to fewer properties coming on the market. We have this reduced supply has contributed to housing shortages in many areas, putting upward pressure on prices. We know this, we've been talking about it for a while. If you can look at the numbers, it'll give you a compelling story. Just watch these numbers for me. The United States has a shortage of approximately 3.7 million housing units, and this coincides with the baby boomers and their extended stays. And the real estate analysts estimate that boomers currently own 32 million homes across the country. And even if a small percentage of these homes would enter the market, it would help and ease inventory. Economists, they're calculating that these boomers are keeping roughly 1.6 million homes off the market that would otherwise been available had they followed the traditional downsizing patterns. That's a lot of houses that are locked up in this housing shortage right now. And for this younger generation, I feel so bad for them, particularly the millennials who are in their prime home buying years. They have nothing to buy. It's such a big challenge for them. Like first-time home buyers, they're finding themselves competing for a limited supply of starter homes, often against investors with cash offers, right? One of our clients, very sad, he tells me he's very frustrated. And he said that his wife and I told me, Diane, we've been looking for over a year. The few affordable homes that come on the market, they get snapped up immediately. Cash offers are much more than what they can put down. And they're really starting to wonder whether they'll ever be able to buy. Lucky for them, there's a house coming on the market that I have coming listed, so hopefully they'll like that one and I can get them in. At least give them a better opportunity than most. So what's happening also is these builders are focusing more on luxury properties because a lot of these boomers are renovating and staying in their existing single-family homes because these people want to move to these homes. These homes aren't going on the market and they're not focusing on the first-time buyer type homes that these first-time buyers typically see. So it's an inventory crunch, a gridlock. What's the natural progression, Diane? The natural progression is the first-time buyer purchases a starter home, and first the sellers sell, the move-up buyers buy their house, and the first-time buyers purchase these starter homes. But now what's going on, the baby boomers are holding onto their homes and fewer starter homes being built. This whole chain has been disrupted. These first-time buyers are now buying up their move-up homes and they're staying forever. My buyers telling me, I'm buying a house, I'm just not moving. They're buying their forever home now. And a lot of these first-time buyers, what they're doing, they're moving in, they're multi-generation housing, they're buying a house, putting an in-law suite in, or buying homes that have possible in-law suites. So instead of their parents moving out of their homes, they're moving in with them, forcing them to buy bigger homes for their first home, and allowing older parents to live independently, but also close. They're right next door, they're in their apartment. They're living together with an in-law suite, separate but together. And the rental market, it's been affected. The few options for buying, more younger people are just renting for longer periods, and it's increased the rental prices, and it's a challenging situation with both buying and renting. It's becoming very expensive either way. And if you look at the age of first-time buyers, it's increased to 35 years in 2023, up from 29 years in the early 1980s. It's a delay in home ownership. It's because of all this inventory. So what does that do? It's just harder for millennials and Gen Z buyers to build wealth through home ownership. And that's traditionally the primary way that middle-class Americans have accumulated their assets. And because like the median net worth right now of baby boomers is 13 times higher than that of millennials at the compared ages. And with this housing equity playing a major role in the disparity. So what's going to happen? Not very sure what's going to happen, but I do know that this is different in all the different areas. Rural areas, some smaller cities, the impact is not as severe as it is in these hot housing markets in the growing metropolitan areas, like cities like San Francisco, Boston, New York, where housing supply is already constrained by geography and regulation. The boomer effect is particularly pronounced. So what's the future outlook look like for this housing situation? I'm going to show you some projections and possible potential scenarios. In the short term, things aren't going to change, guys. They're not going to change dramatically. Boomers are going to continue aging in place for the next decade or so. I know a lot of them are moving because they're calling me. But as boomers are moving into their 80s and beyond, there'll be a significant transfer of housing wealth. It will inevitably occur. Now, some housing economists refer to this as the silver tsunami. That's what I call it, a potentially massive increase in housing inventory as those properties eventually come to the market. I think these numbers are worth considering, so I'm going to show it to you. The Harvard Joint Center of Housing Studies projects that by 2035, 1 in 4 homeowners will be over 75 years old. That's amazing. This group currently owns approximately 14 million homes worth about $6 trillion. And as these homeowners age, these homes will come on the market eventually, either through downsizing or end-of-life transitions, right? And it's going to release 10, 15 million homes onto the market over the next 2 decades. Now, to put that in perspective, that's roughly equivalent to, say, several years worth of new home construction at the current building rates, believe it or not. So the timing impact of the transition are subject of the debate. Now, I did a seminar in February. I got crowded, full house. Full house. Last year, half a house. More and more people are calling. They're telling me 2 to 3 years. I'm thinking 2 to 3 years, we're going to see a little blip. Now, of course, geographically, this distribution will be uneven. Some areas have higher concentrations of older homeowners, experience greater effects. Retirement destinations like Florida, Arizona, and parts of the Northeast and Midwest with aging populations could see more significant housing shifts as more boomers eventually sell their homes. Like I said earlier, this is not going to happen overnight. It's going to be a gradual process spread over years or even decades. And this means that while relief may be coming to the housing market, it won't be immediate and it won't be uniform across the country. And how do we even know that these boomers are going to like the homes they're selling? Maybe they won't, and there's going to be less in value. Are they going to like that split level? Are they coming back? They want a ranch home. What are they going to like? These millennials and Gen Z who will be moving and buying in the next 10 years. What are they going to like? With them often now favoring walkable neighborhoods and shorter commutes, do you have one of those kind of homes? Maybe the boomers' homes, a lot of them are in areas that aren't desirable to these younger buyers. For example, maybe shrinking rural communities or car-dependent suburbs. They might struggle to find buyers even as housing remains scarce in urban centers and, say, job-rich areas. And climate has to do a lot with it too. There's a lot of places now that are flooding and fire risk and extreme heat. They're going to lose value over time, definitely. And that's going to affect the wealth transfer between generations. I know that some municipalities are already adjusting zoning laws to allow for more density and different housing types. So, first-time buyer programs are expanding right now. It's amazing. And there's also discussions about property tax reforms that might create more incentives for older people to downsize. And because all these people are aging in place, companies are developing innovative products for older adults who want to remain independent in their homes. Fall detection systems, medication management tools, voice-activated home controls, all that's happening right now. I would say also for boomers, if you're an individual, I would say financial planning. You should have a financial planner. It's really important. Reverse mortgages, I'm not a fan of, but home equity lines of credit and other financial products that allow you to tap into your housing wealth without selling. It will provide you some options for people who want to stay, but need access to their equity. So there are things for that too. In actuality, all boomers have every right to live where and how they choose. I get it. They've worked for decades, they paid off their mortgages, and they're building equity in their homes. The desire to remain in a familiar surrounding as one ages is completely understandable. But on the other hand, the concentration of housing wealth in one generation raises, I think, legitimate concerns about equity and opportunity for younger Americans. Because if you can't enter into the housing market, and it's very difficult, there's the wealth inequality and it limits economic mobility. I talked about these numbers where homeowners 65 and older gained $3.7 trillion in housing wealth in just the 5-year period from 2016 to 2021. While the homeownership rate for adults under 35 is below pre-2008 recession levels. So we have this disconnect. and what some economists are calling it is generational housing gridlock, okay? Which I agree that it could definitely have long-lasting implications for wealth distribution and economic opportunity in America, because there's a housing wealth gap between generations, and it has grown to unprecedented levels, with the average boomer having about 10 times the housing wealth as the average millennial owner. So how, as a society, do we want to approach aging and housing? The current emphasis on aging in single-family homes may not be the optimal approach from a health perspective or resources, because there's more communal living arrangements that could provide better support networks, right, for the older adults. One of the biggest things is social isolation when people age in these large single-family homes. They're a problem, particularly after a spouse passes away or when driving becomes difficult. Put into a communal setting, these same people report higher quality of life and better health outcomes than those living alone in single-family homes. So that's an issue right there. And then you have infrastructure and community design. They play a role too, because many of these suburban areas, they weren't designed with boomers and aging in mind. Limited public transportation, unwalkable streets, isolation, they become risks as well. I've heard of some communities that are addressing these challenges by doing co-housing arrangements where residents maintain private homes but share some common spaces and activities, gaining popularity. Village models, where members pay dues to fund services that help them remain in their homes, they've sprung up in many areas. It's grown from just a handful in 2001 to now over 350 nationwide today. You should check it out. They provide great services, transportation, home maintenance, social activities. These help seniors remain independent while addressing some of the challenges of aging in place. Not so much in our area, but further west and north, they've got some real innovative developers. How can we find ways to increase housing supply across the board? Through new construction or adaptive reuse of existing buildings or more flexible zoning. All this will benefit all generations without requiring any specific group to give up, what they want to do. That's what I think should happen. We've explored a lot today. Baby boomer, homeowners, reshaping the housing landscape by choosing to age in place or even upsize rather than following the traditional path of downsizing in retirement. It's the changing attitudes towards aging, strong emotional attachments to homes, economic incentives, and just basic practical family considerations. I think it's a perfect sense for individuals making them, but they're contributing to some broader challenges in the housing market, particularly for younger generations trying to purchase their first home. So what do you think about this trend? Are you a boomer who's choosing to stay in your home? Or perhaps you're a younger person feeling the effects of the tight housing market? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences and comments below. And I'd love to help you navigate this housing market with confidence. Now, if you are a senior planning to sell in 2025, be sure to watch my video, Seniors Planning to Sell in 2025. Avoid these common mistakes. It's filled with essential tips to help you sidestep common pitfalls and get the best value for your home. Watch it now.